Alrighty then.
Well, hello. What's up?
Pouring some beverages.
Yeah. Gotta stay hydrated. What's your whistle?
Okay, taste test complete. Let's do a toast.
Cheers.
There it is. And to you, the loyal listeners,
Cheers.
friends, followers, fans, whatever you want to call it. Cheers.
So refreshing.
So I've been drinking, well, let me rephrase that. So I've been choosing to drink sugar-free or diet soda pop and Sprite Zero. And the other day I had a Coke Zero for the first time. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Tasted like Coke. No sugar.
There you go.
Who knew? Who knew? So the rum and Cokes are going to get an upgrade here pretty soon.
There you go. Tasty.
Yeah. So anybody that's watched us for any amount of videos, we have like two sets. One was at the bar and one was at the desk. And now this is like a makeshift little card table area because I'm redoing the room.
Little renovations going on.
We'll have our own little kind of dedicated podcast area here pretty soon. Not there yet, but we're making progress.
Baby steps.
Yeah, big time baby steps. So anybody that's made it with us this far, if you've lasted the 3 minutes of thrilling espionage and lore, check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@FightTheFearPodcast. Get on there. For extra episodes and other fun, go to patreon.com/FightTheFearPodcast. I think I have one I've been holding out, waiting until we get a few more Patreon members. It's you and me baked and just repeating ourselves for like 3 hours.
Okay.
It's I caught a few minutes of it the other day and I was like, this is good. Not for general consumption.
Right.
So we have, what do we have? So we still have, I think, 2 episodes to put out along with this one. So I'm going to have a bunch of material coming out at the same time, a bunch of episodes and stuff coming. It'll be fun time over the next few days, week or so as I get things back together here. And something that we'll be talking about soon, we'll have a guest. We're going to go back to the pyramids because there was a new development recently where things from 2022 have come to light in 2025. There's some fuckery afoot. And there's the guy that for many years was like running the Ministry of Archaeology in regards to the pyramids in Giza and things like that. And it seems that he might have been accused of some things. First and foremost, gatekeeping a lot of information.
Yeah.
So in 2022, there were some scans done with some heavy, deep penetrating radar that gave some crazy results that guys are just now getting into. So we'll be discussing that in an episode or 2 from now. And it takes us beyond anything that we've tried to figure out because for so long, the focus has been on how were these things built? How did we get the material in place from 500 miles away and things like that in this enormous weight and precision? And now the information is just turning that on its head and making it a whole new conversation. So that'll be coming up soon.
But also leans into some of the theories that people put out that makes more sense in a way. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff.
As
there.
we go down the path of talking about stuff from the nature of man, serial killers and biblical stories that have sort of prophetic overtones, like a prophecy of great storms and tribulations and the end times and all this stuff. And you get into serial killers and we get into prison talk and all this different stuff and ghosts and goblins and demons and daylight and just all this different stuff, everything, UFOs, it all keeps coming back to one recurring thing to me is that most of this could not exist without the touch of a human being, because I feel like we can fuck up a wet dream anytime and we have it in us to be the darkest dark and the lightest light. It's like without one, there can't be the other. So as we explore a lot of these themes and lore and urban legend and all this different stuff, there's just a thing with humanity that it's just such a fine line, like we skirt it. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight is, like, to me, sort of maybe the brighter side of things, but still a mystery in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, have you heard much about the telepathy tapes? That's the name of a podcast, right. But it covers the work of Dr. Diana Powell. She was doing work. She's like a neuroscientist, and she was doing work with what is commonly referred to as a savant, somebody that has a very diminished outward a capability of interfacing with the world, but they're and a lot of things they need help on. They can't do a lot of things, but one particular thing they're just exceptional talents in. Say a piano player, somebody that sits down and can hear something and play it perfectly, no lessons, but then maybe struggle to feed themselves or to change themselves, or but they're exceptional. Or I'm reminded of a guy that he had, like, as an adult man, the reading level or the intelligence of, like, maybe a 6-year-old or something, but he was an amazing artist. He carved all these very intricate things, and that was his specialty, but he couldn't really do many other things. So in her studies with the savants, she started to find out and get word from her from some parents of nonverbal autistic children, which fits into that category of hard to interface with the world in a regular way. But she found out through years of study and tests that these children that are nonverbal, they couldn't speak. Some can type letters on an iPad or point to letters, numbers, shapes on a board, but just could not verbalize it in another way, that they could read their parent's mind or their caregiver, somebody close to them that was nurturing them. They actually had ESP, and it's been provable, been tested. They would have a parent in another room. They would be recording there and the subject, recording, several cameras around, microphones, so there's no verbal cue that could be given. And the parent was shown pictures, or in some cases given a small math problem, what's 100 plus 300. And they were just to think of it, not say anything, not do anything, but just look at the flashcards or whatever it was on a computer screen. And the child in the other room would, not all the time, but in the high 90%, and this is across the board, 95% of the time they were accurate, which is just mind-blowing, right?
I listened into the first episode where she was talking about the girl that put this together, how she was talking about the research, and she talked to one of the photographers that were handling, like you said, setting it up so there could be no, like, cheating, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And she's talking to him, and he says 95 to 100% correct every time. The person in the other room, and like you said, it would be almost like they're kind of like DNA linked. Like, I think of twins having a secret language or something, or just, I don't know how to explain that, just that way to communicate,
know what each other's thinking or their probabilities, right?
And he said that they would show them something. Everything was quiet. They would show them something on the table. They would concentrate on it for a minute. That kid in the other room would just be like, number 3, or a black square, or a bird, whatever, and they would draw it, or the person or the parent would draw it, and they would draw it, or it was insane. But I think that I believe that that's highly possible for sure, because something they say a lot of times is when you lose one sense, another sense is heightened. Big example would be when somebody goes blind. They can smell 10 times better than normal, hear 10 times better than normal. Touch, they can, they're reading with their hands and, their fingers. And so it made a lot of sense to me to think, okay, if a person's autistic, where we would think it's abnormal, it's maybe it's that the human brain just there's a just one tiny nerve that's going a different direction, that's sort of a lost sense, so to speak, and it hyper makes everything else hyper.
Yeah.
And then when you said about music, I remember seeing a kid on TV years ago. They did like an expose or whatever you want to call it on this kid. He was like 16. He couldn't really talk. So it was, you couldn't really gauge what he necessarily knew. So like you said, he's like a 6-year-old, but he would play music and all of a sudden he could sing the lyric, the melodies, sound like an angel, like he could do a concert. And he had no way of seeing to read the music. I think his vision was bad too or something. And they would showed him the piano, let him play on the piano. He's making little melodies and stuff as he grew older. By the time he was about 16, he could listen to a song, fiddle around a little bit, figure it out, boom, sing that thing perfect. Not necessarily, it wasn't a mimic like the artist, but it was him singing his rendition.
Sure.
But it was like you could sit there and listen to it like, wow, it was but he didn't talk any other time.
Right.
It was really strange how the brain sort of has like the gateway that opens and closes and lets you see some things and not others and filters things out. It's like maybe people like that are better off. I have a cousin that has Down syndrome. He's a twin. He wasn't expected to live past 30. He's 52, 51. And I remember when we were kids, he wasn't very verbal. He could talk somewhat, but it was very hard to understand him, very hard for him to enunciate words. So he learned sign language. But I mean, when he learned sign language, he knew sign, like, it's amazing how fast he would, sign and people that could sign with him knew what he was saying and everything. Like he knew what he was saying. It's almost like someone's trapped in there,
Right. Exactly.
And we would have just a random toys laying around. And I remember one time specifically, so clear. It was a ruler and like some Matchbox cars and some building blocks and like some rubber bands. And he just kind of turns away and he's doing something and comes back like David Copperfield, like a magic trick. And it was like a toy gun.
Wow.
And it was like, he was like moving like it had a clip and he's making all the noises and stuff. And then he hands it to you like, here. Like it wasn't meant to be dangerous. It was just toy, like
what can I make out
cops
of what
and
I have
robbers.
here?
Back then, it was cops and robbers, and your little action figures had the little blasters, and it looked like something that it was a ruler. You could see that it was a ruler, but the shape, it was like immediately recognizable. It's like, how did he figure that out?
He had that understanding.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think, like I said, it's like when I said blindness, but maybe it's not necessarily blindness. It's just something genetic where something's taken away and everything else is super enhanced. I talked to some twins recently. They're identical twins, and the joke was that I've known you guys for 15 years and I still can't tell you apart. just teasing them, but I asked them, did you guys have your own language and stuff? They said, oh, we still do. When she's hurting, I'll be at home and I'll know she's hurting and I'll be sad and I'll just text her and be like, what's wrong?
Right.
They don't even have to talk. What's wrong? It's amazing. They're in their 30s and that's so amazing to me. She just picks it up and texts her sister and says, what's wrong? Because it's like a clone copy of you. It's like another version of yourself, and they can touch. So maybe these savants, it's somehow genetic through their parents, because I think you even brought it up, wasn't it, where the one said, some passage in this, she said it was hard for them to have certain thoughts or certain trains of thoughts because the kid would know.
Well, yeah, there was one teacher in particular that, and apparently it doesn't just have to be somebody related to this, a caregiver, a teacher that, is around them and they trust. And
sort of emotionally connect.
But the one story was that the teacher would be at home and all of a sudden the student would pop into her head and like she could hear his voice telling her things. And so it happened so often, she said she had to go to him and say, look, there's boundaries here. This is awesome. This is great. But from these hours when I'm not here, you can't just pop into my head anytime. Wow. And she even questioned herself, right? The normal reactions like, well, she's just making it up. Well, these were like verifiable facts that she was hearing about a third person or a fourth
Right,
person, and she wasn't around. And then when she went to school the next day or over the next week after the weekend, she knew that these events had happened to this person the way that she had thought. So she's not just making it up. But there's so many of these tests that conclude that there's no physical way that they're like setting it up, and it's trickery.
So the researcher, she gets emails and letters from people all the time because they don't know what they should do with this ability or behavior. And there was the family in Mexico, and she did a Zoom call with them. And while she's doing the Zoom call with them, the young girl they're showing the camera stuff, and the young girl's over there smiling because she's typing it into her iPad. And they're like, she just did it again. She got it right again. And they said she had memories from being in the womb and all kinds of cool stuff that they say you can't do. But I just think anything's possible.
So the human mind, the brain, is so amazing. We were talking about a few different related things, but they are separate. So somebody that is a savant, they may have a talent and they're able to either perceive something in a way that regular people or normal people, what you would consider a normal baseline, couldn't do or accomplish, or but it's just them. This goes a step beyond where they can actually interact with somebody that's maybe not even in the same room. They could be in a different state. They could be quite a distance. I didn't get far enough into it to know exactly all the details of this, but apparently there's some sort of a club. It's called the Hill, that a group of people, they're not at home with each other, but they're throughout the city, the neighborhood, wherever, and they go to meet at this place. And there's basically a gatekeeper or gatekeepers that don't allow other people in with their thoughts, but they can mingle and have these sort of telepathic sort of interactions.
It's not a physical place. It's in the metaphysical.
Like the Matrix or something.
The other dimension.
Yeah.
The other thing of this that connects to some stuff we've talked about is when we talked about the remote viewing research that supposedly had taken place on unwitting participants on Montauk, because some of this goes into that. If the kid is in the other room seeing what the parent is 10 feet away, that's a remote view.
Sure. Right.
I mean, that to me is it's a great way to give an example of it. And then the savant thing is, around the turn of the 20th century, a lot of savants were called idiot savants.
Right.
Because they couldn't do other things that seemed normal.
Right.
But maybe it was an adult and could only come alive when they were doing a math problem.
Right.
It could literally do trigonometry, algebra, all kinds of equations, but everything else could not handle at all, which we now have come to I think see as probably autism, and there's a spectrum of that goes from light to severe, and I would say a lot of that's on the severe end. And again, the quote unquote normalcy is taken away, and everything else is heightened. And I think people say like find your talent, I think a lot of it goes hand in hand with what we're talking about, because they say, well, if you put 10,000 hours into one thing, you'll be a master at it. But there's also this thing with your mind that, when you get to a certain age and you're thinking of so many different things, you're so busy in the frontal lobe or cortex or whatever you would call it. You're so busy up there that the stuff in the back that can really show your potential is kind of bored out of its mind and asleep.
Right.
And maybe the people that are the autistic savants, since they don't have that's wide awake and the full potential's there.
Yeah. I
also think that your intestines, your gut, when people say trust your gut, there's a sort of, what do they call it? Like the body brain, because it's sort of like the same as the brain, but in the gut. And I've had times in my life where I've had a weird sensation in my side about a certain series of events, and I was completely like 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 they say, trust your gut.
Uh-huh.
In the most literal sense, I had this little tingle in my gut every time I tried to sort of lay these facts out. Like, you tell, like, if somebody's doing something to you and they're gaslighting you,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't quite figure it out yet. Am I being lied to? Are they telling the truth? Are they doing this way? And it was that situation, and that little tickle was like, they're lying.
Yeah.
Like, I call it the bullshit detector, the bullshit meter. Like, I think everybody has something like that. It's like if we both had a Chevy car and they were both from the same year and they both had the same options. Maybe not all of the options are going to work the same, but both cars are going to have all the options. I feel like the brain and the gut all have that, but there could be maladies, there could be disease, there could be things that take away or add to. And it's like, if you could figure out a way to just be still somehow, to sort of sink inside your mind to those levels, you could probably unlock some of these things that we see. It's these amazing abilities. They seem unbelievable, but I don't know, man. I feel like on the human level, so much of this is believable because it's not. I'm not trying to convince you that there's a little green man watching you. I'm showing you this woman came in with this kid she's been taking care of since she was 3 weeks old. She can't talk, and it's not because she's never tried. It's just she just has a mental block that doesn't allow her to communicate that way. Well, when that woman goes in the other room and she forgets something, she can come back in the other room and the kid's already got it out.
Mm-hmm.
Or they said they were reading a passage and the kid was somewhere else and able to type on the iPad. They were typing numbers, and they're like, she's reading a passage. Why would she type numbers? Well, when they looked everything over, it was the pages. It was the page number of the passage she was reading.
Uh-huh.
The kid was seeing the pages.
Right.
And they would say that they also had clairvoyant-like abilities where they could see ahead. But what it wasn't that they could see ahead. They were seeing it right then, real time, and reading it before the person would start. So they could already say, this is about Romeo and Juliet, before the person already said, Romeo, Romeo, where art thou? Whatever.
Right.
And I maybe I'm an idiot savant because I had a time in high school. I think I was around high school, a buddy of mine, and I used to talk about stuff like this. And it wasn't necessarily about that we knew these kids had these abilities, but we would sometimes talk about where you had this. We knew about this guy with the music, and sometimes you'd hear about the Rain Man type person.
Mm-hmm.
Like Rain Man. I mean, there's a great example. They did some research for that. Dude could count cards and did stuff with numbers that were just unbelievable. But if you didn't let him watch Wapner at 3:00,
right,
he was flipping out,
Right.
But we did something one time where we were in the dark, and we said, okay, I'm going to send you an image. What is it? And I sent him a ladder, and he said, I see a ladder. I said, okay, send me one. And I said, I see clouds. And he goes, yeah, I'm in the clouds.
Wow.
Maybe we were high. I don't know. You can believe me if you want or not. And I'm not trying to equate anything that I ever did with this stuff. But when you told me about this, I was like, oh, man, I've had all this weird shit happen to me in my life. Why has it got to be this time, because I did this thing. And it sounds so unbelievable that I'm going to go, oh, yeah, by the way, I did this thing with my buddy. It was one time in the dark and quiet and,
Well, there's something to it, though. I mean, like you said, if we're being bombarded with all these signals every day, we've got, bills to worry about and kids to raise and, whatever age you are, but all the responsibilities that you have going on in your life, all the information coming at you, all the apps, TikTok and YouTube and everything else, you're scrolling all the time. You got phone calls, you got texts, you're distracted. You can't hear that or can't tune into it. But meditation, those types of things that slow you down, take you away from all of that signal input, allows you to, at the very least, introspect and maybe figure some things out, but then hopefully tune into something that's beyond what you're doing, you know?
I've said it before that the human mind is just untapped potential there, and that I do truly believe in the hive mind. If there's somebody else, if I can think it up, somebody's already researching it. But I believe if you got a few people in together and they practice exactly what you're saying, just limit how much is coming in, quiet your minds, establish some small little benchmark things to achieve together. And I believe that bringing human minds together could just make unlimited power of a magnitude greater than anything, any power generator, sun, star, anything. But nobody is telling us that they're working on it, and I'm too dumb to get us there.
Well, I mean, literally take the hive, right? The bee, the hive, or the ant mound, the termite mound. I mean, a lot of that is done by signals, pheromones, scents, chemical trails, right? But they behave in a way that is, they can almost predict what their neighbor is doing, or they all know they have a job to do, but who taught them the job? They were just created
it's like
knowing
in their
the
genetics,
job.
yeah.
I've heard the story about a test on rats, right? And they got rats on the East Coast and rats on the West Coast. And the rats on the East Coast are given a new maze, which is identical to the one on the West Coast, but the East Coast starts first, right? And the rats go through the maze, and they time how long each rat takes to learn it to get to the end. And of course, as they go through and the rats do it a couple times, they learn it. And when there's enough people that, or not enough rats that know this, the ones on the West Coast begin to do it way quicker without ever having done it before. The same exact maze. It's like somehow enough numbers of one species get together, and it makes it easier for that same species somewhere else. Now, is that true? I wasn't there. I don't know. But I've heard that story many times. So something to it.
There is. And there's something to the human brain that's just not unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these researchers looking at the people with these abilities, that they're savants, they're super intelligent, hyper aware. So these things can take place. How is it not unlocked for everyday average Joe?
Right.
And I think it's because of that frontal lobe thing going on. There's just so much bombarding you. And then I also think too, because I'm as guilty of it as anybody. If I have some downtime for a few minutes, I'm looking stuff up. I'm doing a little bit of research for stuff we're going to talk about. I'm looking for stuff for a trip or something I want to buy, or, trying to get the details on a computer or something weird, or a video game or whatever it is. If I'm kind of not really thinking that through to a conclusion, and I'm just taking in information like the swipe, and I go back to my duties for the day, do my technical work or physical work, whatever it is. When I go down for rest that evening, my subconscious, I think, is still sorting that all out. And all that does is gets in the way of like your natural abilities. It's like you're clogging it up the pipeline. So the meditation thing, like I used to try and do that to get to sleep. For like 10 years, I had like insomnia. I could not sleep. And I would try all these different things. Sometimes it would be reading. Sometimes it would be breathing techniques. Sometimes it would be, there's a technique I read about where you put your feet on the pillows, your head on a pillow, and your hands on pillows, and try to imagine an orb of light entering through your feet and coming up through your body, and you just kind of walk it up or float it up through all your extremities and everything until it hits your head, and then you're asleep by then. It's like this long process. I mean, I would do this all the time. Now I can fall asleep like a rock, but I had this period where it's like my mind was just too busy, or I'd wake up with all these thoughts. And I've had times where I thought something was there, someone was there. Is it a ghost? What is it? No, it's your ass was thinking too much today, and now your mind's like, hey, hold on, dude. I got to work this out for you. It's something that I think, well, I can't say that I think or know, but it's something that I feel happens to us all every day. Like you said, you've got work. You've got, if you have a business, so you're looking for different jobs. You're thinking of a job ahead, a job behind. Did I do this right? Did I do that? I've got some social stuff I'm doing. I've got some fun stuff I'm doing. I've got a kid. My kid has a kid. Now I'm thinking of all this, and we have X's and O's and all this other stuff. Our minds, I don't think, have an off switch. And when we think we're going to get some good rest, I don't think we are. So definitely need to integrate meditation in there somewhere. It's just like going to the gym. It's the same thing. People say, well, I don't have time. Well, you have time for the things you make time to do when they're important to you.
Right. And
so like your mental health should be just as important as your physical health, as well as your spiritual health, because it's like the things you feed your mind are going to come back out in physical ways, mental ways, the way you react to people. You're constantly looking at dark things, images. I don't know what you want to put under that parameter. I just mean negative energy. And then you're just supposed to wake up the next morning and be happy-go-lucky. No, you're snapping at people. You're being negative, pushy, aggressive, agitated.
Right.
You're letting all these things control you emotionally and bother you. And it's not enough time in the day to fight that fight all the time, So it's like, if it's that important to me, like this is kind of what we're doing here. It's kind of like therapy in a way for me, but it also like it's fun because we get to explore these topics.
Educational.
If it was me by myself, I'm full of shit. But if I got a buddy with me,
we're both full of shit.
You guys, I was listening to them both. It's like a fun release, and I think we have to give ourselves a break sometimes, and we're really hard on ourselves about stuff.
Yeah.
And we carry things with us all the time, and guilt and pain, and you just got to get to a point where you're in the now. Things that have happened. You can't get them back. You can't think too far ahead because you can't control either one. Staying in the now is such a big process anyway. And but when you can do that, you're kind of free from those things. And I did hear one time, the closest you'll ever be from life or death, the closest you'll ever be to the middle, to where they don't exist, is during sex. So have lots of sex. But I think there's a lot of things that can take the place of that, though. If you play an instrument, if you study a specific type of art, or you said carving, something that takes a skill where you have to look and you can't, your mind will eventually hone in on just that, and you will be free of all of these other forces.
Right.
Just for that little while. So hobbies are great to have.
Yeah, certain ones. If you like bike riding or running, that gives you all kinds of time to think.
Those might work against you.
Yeah.
I took up running formerly took up running. This is probably almost 20 years ago. And I was going to do a bigger race. So I was training, doing all this stuff. I can remember a few times, like literally breaking down crying while I'm running because I'm just overthinking stuff and it's just pouring out of me.
Yeah.
Kind of cool to have the release, but at the same time, it's like, what's this guy running down the street crying?
Are you all right, man?
You need some help, sir? My shoes are untied.
My shoes are too tight.
So that's like, but exercise gets things out of your system, stress and things, and you're not thinking about a lot of that stuff. If you're playing guitar and you're learning a song, even if it's just a couple notes, and you're just kind of lost in the drone of the notes.
Yeah.
Music has a wild healing
Find
ability.
a distraction from the distractions.
Yes. It's amazing that musical composition's been around for as long as it has, and it can have this effect on you that can take you somewhere else, emotional, anger, fear, happiness, joy. It's just so many different emotions.
So the therapeutic, it can heal you.
So I can't imagine being a person who you're sort of in your mind, and the only time that you can open the gate is when you can let out this cool ability. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of creepy because you're in somebody else's head. You're seeing what they see. You're remote viewing. Right. What they're thinking and feeling.
So let's expand on this just a little bit. Be the same sort of technology, if you will. It's not technology, but if you take it to that realm, right? In 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whenever it is that they develop the actual scientific technology to be able to read people's minds, record your dreams. That's something I always thought as a kid, like, wouldn't it be cool to record your dreams? Maybe some of them, but
to see what the mind can see.
Like, because a lot of them you forget. You may dream and then you think you know it, but as soon as you go to say it, like, I can't remember details now, or you only remember it right after you wake up, and then later in the day you go, what fragments of it.
I knew I was having a dream about something.
Right. And then some of them are so vivid, they stick with you forever or for a long time. But if people get to the point where they can develop a technology like the Neuralink or something like that, where they could read somebody's mind all the time, then you can read their intentions. You can read, this person lying? There's no more bullshit, right? There's no more like saying one thing but thinking another thing.
I think
that's pretty scary.
I think the breakthrough there, like a lie detector sees patterns, wavelengths that show when your heart rate increases, you're stressed. Mm-hmm. It could be like a step beyond that to tell intention and things, but the cooler one to me, the next step, I guess, would be to see what the mind sees, right? Because it would just be just a wild mix of things, but you could maybe decipher some stuff out of it, because I think a lot of the things that we have in our mind and our imaginations when we're having dreams and things like that, it's just an amalgamation or a mixture of stuff that you've seen or heard throughout the day. Sure. And then it's also those things you heard while I'm listening to you talk and somebody's talking behind you. Your mind probably hears that conversation. And it's mixing the two together to make a wild AI-inspired adventure in your mind or whatever.
So now you get in trouble for what your wife dreams you've done.
Yes.
In the future, you'll get in trouble for what you dreamed.
Yes. Somebody said the other day, AI would be to the level where you get like how you have Alexa and you tell Alexa to play a song or whatever. It would be on your TV and you'd say, AI, make me Predator 4, the dance version. And it would be the movie Predator 4, but they're dance. It's like a musical. And it would be as good as any movie because the AI would be able to put it all together, Mm-hmm. That in the next decade, it would be that advanced where you could say, give me Titanic 2. They didn't sink after all, or something, you just give it a simple request like that and it would spit it back to you, that they think that's what entertainment is going to end up being. And I thought, to some degree, you make your own personalized, right? You'd make your own
on-demand movie, right?
Give me Transformers in black and white, like 1930s edition, and you can do that already. But it would just spit it out and have a 2-hour movie, and it would be full script, action sequences, everything. And
I want to know what Tarantino's 11th movie is then.
Yeah. So then I thought there's got to have to be some advances there with, like you're saying, where it's how those things can connect to you directly.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I heard yesterday, because as soon as you say any of this stuff now, speaking of AI, and it picks up on the algorithm that spits out just for you, there was a girl, do not know her name. She was younger. I wouldn't even put her at 30. I'd probably put her in her 20s. She said she can remote view, and she's been remote viewing for a few years. She didn't know what it was as a kid, and then now she knows what it is, and she's been giving people information. And we talked about the case, the I-70 Strangler, where they brought in a psychic, and the psychic was almost right. Told him it's over in this area, and that was close to where they had killed the one guy in the barn, and the older guy was like, yeah, that's not gruesome enough. We need some more. And they were, whatever they were doing. But that's almost like remote viewing in a sense, to bring in the specialist, the medium or whatever. But she said, in regards to this girl, she said that she left the planet.
Wow.
She remote viewed for the first time, and she was on the surface of the moon. So then they were like, well, how would you know you're on the surface of the moon if you've never been on the surface of the moon?
Sure, right.
And she said, that's not how it works. She's like, you're in a lot of ways connected to the universe, and it's just as simple as getting to the location. I was like, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Did she say that she had intentions to go there, or she opened her mind and that popped in and then she figured out where she was?
She had been remote viewing, and it would be random places, and she could describe stuff to the detail where people said there's no doubt she's seen this.
But sometimes she doesn't know where she is at first.
And she said she had gone once and wasn't quite sure, and the second time she was there, remembered it vividly and said, I'm on the moon.
Wow. Did she give any details of what's up there?
It's all about that dark side,
yeah,
as far as I'm concerned, and what's really in those craters. Now they're saying, to get off topic for a second here, there might be some ancient relics found on Mars after all. Some evidence of existence of life on Mars. And I've been trying to say for the longest that all of the planets in our solar system had life on them, and whatever the cataclysm was jacked them all up. Somebody's going to unlock that at some point through research and AI, and bring in some savants and bring in some remote viewers and all this different stuff. But I guess that's for another day. But to come back to the savants, it's definitely something that I've experienced with my own cousin. In sort of artistic ways. I've seen him do some things that are just amazing, and learn some things so fast and be so good at them, but not able to be, I hate to use the word normal because that doesn't sound very loving of a relative, but I don't know a good way to describe it. Like you and I having a conversation, we can look at each other, body language, we talk, this person can't do that, but they can sign language like crazy and right answers to things somewhat. So it doesn't make them any less intelligent. It's just finding a new way to let them communicate.
To get it out, right?
Yeah.
To be able to interface.
And maybe that's been the struggle from ages ago that people couldn't figure out. And we had the guy doing the lobotomies on people because he thought they were uncontrollable. So I'm just going to drill into their brain. And by the way, I'm not a real surgeon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about that one. There was a guy doing that stuff in the 1930s and 40s. And people were going to him to have this done. And it was the intercranial orbitals through their eye.
Wow.
Poking through into the skull through the eye.
Ouch.
And really messing some people's lives up because they weren't uncontrollable, or they had something going on that didn't seem normal. So, we're just going to give them a lobotomy.
It's real easy to think if you see the physical body is not working the way that you would expect the human body to work. You can't control certain bodily functions. You're not able to walk, talk, do things. Yeah. You automatically assume the mind follows that. Like they're not making coherent thoughts. They're not able to have independent thoughts or anything.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that is not the case at all. They're brilliant. They're sharp. They can't get their body to work correctly in order to express that, and they have to find other ways.
I knew a guy that he lost his license, but had to get to work, so he bought a moped. Gust of wind from a truck passing him blew the moped off the road, slid in the rocks, smacked the side of his head on the road. No big deal, right? Wakes up in the hospital, can't talk. Can't verbalize, just grunts and groans and noises. Can barely squeak out words after a few months.
Wow.
He can text you and write to you and tell you everything that we're saying. And he was a close friend of a friend and conveyed to him, he's like, I feel trapped inside my head. So there's a person who became that way through injury.
Right.
And then the mind still works. I've heard of, there was a woman, I can't even remember when this was, but I think it was like on a 2020. They always do the big mystery thing about a case, And a woman, husband had tried to kill his wife and shot her point blank in the head. But the bullet was a small caliber, went in and just spun around and went back out.
Wow.
And exited. Did some damage. And she actually came back from that and was relatively fine. It's amazing how the body can heal to a degree. I'm not going to say every time, everything, but that's a wild ability that we have too, is healing. And like something else I was reading about, a version of Alzheimer's where your body has memory, like in a computer, there's memory that has function. So like your body will breathe, the heart will beat, you'll have to go to the bathroom and things like that, and there's signals from your body. Like you don't have to actively think to breathe.
Right.
You don't have to actively think to like, I got to go to the bathroom. The body tells you, you feel it. Oh, I better go to the bathroom. There's a form of Alzheimer's that only affects that. So then the person can talk to you and they'll lose some short-term memory, but then they'll start not being able to control their bodily function or even walk and different things like that. And you talk about feeling trapped in your own body at that point.
Wow. Yeah. One more thing about the savants and the telepathy. Was there that movie Minority Report? Remember that? I mean, it probably came out 25 years ago. I don't know how. And I think it was set in like 2050, 2052, something like that, which is not that far away, 25 years. But that idea that they kept these so-called, what were they called? The viewers or something, the seers, the precogs. They kept them in a pool, but they were able to predict when a crime was going to happen. So they almost got into the mind or seen snippets of what somebody else, a remote person, a remote view, was going to do, and then they went and arrested them before they could actually do it.
That's kind of where I was talking about some of the research of the mind, the body brain, the trust your instincts, things like that. When they can figure out how to tap into that and get a hive of these together, they could have a literal think tank because they got them in a tank thinking,
right?
And they can plug into their ability, and they're not quote unquote normal. So who's going to care if we just keep 50 people over here in this thing connected to this?
Well, they're helping humanity. It's always under the guise of helping.
I could see that happening, man. There's going to be breakthroughs in the research, like you said, the chip. The research with the chip in the brain and things like that. There's going to be people with spinal cord injuries able to walk again because of a chip or something, or it's not going to just be an exoskeleton or things like that. It's going to be some way to repair those pathways. Yep. And again, mankind is going to get his hands in the mix of nature and really mix some things up.
Some things could be really good and some things could be really bad.
We've said this a few times at different junctures in our talks. How long before you think there's like a big breakthrough in the savant, you know, sort of opening an ability for more than just savants? Like how close are we, do you think?
That the average person can tap
Could
into
maybe
that,
tap into that
tap into
type
that.
of thing.
You know, I'd like to think we're, you know, a few short years away. You know, it seems to be there's some kind of resurgence maybe or emergence of the more, you know, vibrational sort of allowing yourself to tap into those types of thoughts.
And a deeper understanding, I think,
if there's
for sure.
a tipping point of enough people want to explore that and try it, there seems to be maybe it just get over the edge, and now it opens up the ability for more and more people to.
Well, you know, some kids with autism, if you touch them, they freak out, right?
Sure. Or
so
loud noises.
So
lights.
75, 80 years ago, they would have been put in an institution. They would have been given a lobotomy. They would have been given shock treatment. They would have been chemically castrated, so to speak.
Hysterical, right? They're
so that they were completely shut off from society. Mm-hmm. But now there's a deeper understanding where there's like, wait a minute.
Right.
He just did something there. There's something. Wait a second. The parents were noticing it.
Sure.
She knew what I was thinking. How did she do that? Let's see if she can do that again. Oh my God, she did it again. Now there's this deeper understanding. We're like, okay, hold on a second. Like maybe there's something here. But so does it become chemical or mechanical? Mm-hmm. You know, then how does the research go there? I think probably chemical, most likely, because you nailed it, I think, when I suggested the thing about being busy and you said meditation. There can be a chemical that can completely level you out to where there's no other thoughts than what sort of that pathway is. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they'll get to that, but they're unlocking things with the genome. They're unlocking things with medicine that can really pinpoint certain things in the body.
Ayahuasca.
For sure, though. For sure. There's a connection, for sure. People come out of ayahuasca after they've shit themselves and puked their guts out and say, I think I know the meaning of life now.
Right.
I want to do it again. I'm going to say 10 years from now, 2035, if we're still even having the thought of doing something like this, the conversation will be, did you get your implant yet? Did you take that pill yet? Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? I'm not doing it. Meanwhile, we're doing it on these microphones sounding like this, and we're like 50 miles away from each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you so choose, you can get something or do something that'll let you tap into.
I think there was a movie about that too, a pill that would make your brain 300% better, smarter, faster, sharper. For sure. Some sort of chemical or mechanical or both.
There's got to be something that connects all of this some way, that if you have these ideas, someone's brought it up, someone's seen something.
Somebody's working on it somewhere.
They're bringing to light this thing about the savants that have these abilities, to recognize that, in a sense, there's nothing wrong with them. There's more right with them than there's wrong. It's just the way they're seen through the lens of society or,
I'm sure there's a lot more study to be done, but it's fascinating, and I'm going to dig deeper into it because I think it's a fascinating and profoundly important to the human race. If this is an actual thing going on, more people, hundreds, thousands can do it.
You feel like, damn, like, did we miss that? Mm-hmm. Like all those years, did we miss this? We could. It's like FOMO. We could have.
And you know what?
We could have done this 30 years ago.
And what if this is the case? What if it's a gift given to those people, or they can tap into it because they're nothing but good? Imagine if somebody that had all the advantages of a normally working body and mind, and then they can do that. And what if they weren't a good person and they would,
Right.
maybe there's just something that can only be tapped into because you're lacking in these other areas.
Yeah. If you took the mind of a person with Down syndrome, for instance, and most say that they're basically kids, little kids, that anybody, them or the savants or a normie, whatever you want to call the regular person, because I think that is the easier way to equate it. Because if you had 1,000 people that just showed up, there's going to be something mentally wrong with maybe a handful, and the rest would say, well, we're normal, you're not normal. But besides that argument is forgot the point I was going to make. What I was going to say, what I was going to say was, I think if someone's abused and they in turn abuse, that you could abuse someone into being a bad person, because they would eventually think that that's normal.
Yeah.
And then they would eventually fall under that spell of just being dark and bad, and most people that you would see in the savant category, probably a lot of high functioning autistic category, high functioning mentally challenged or mentally retarded, you would say they're full of love and light. They're so good. They're such a good person. Mm-hmm. There was that special show, Love on the Spectrum. People are autistic, and like all these kids seem so sweet and so full of love. There was something off, right? Like I said, to the normal. And it was almost like they don't need to be out by themselves. It's almost unsafe because an unsavory type's going to get to them, and you don't want to see that.
Right.
You don't want to see that for them. And they just seem so good. And you just really, your heart hurt because my heart hurt because I have children, and I thought, man, at some point, the parent is going to not be able to take care of them anymore. And they're not going to have that support, that person that knows them that well. And they could fall into a bad way. So it's like you're raised with love, you're going to give love. You're raised with abuse, you're going to be abusive. I can say that for anybody, but especially these people that have these abilities, and they're going to get abused and used for the ability. But at some point, I hope that there's a breakthrough in the research that sort of normalizes some of this, but helps them as well as helps the rest of us.
Right. Because
there's something there that could benefit all of us. We just kind of, it's right in front of us. We don't know what it is. It's right there.
I think the important thing is that whether you believe it or you don't, talk about it. Think about it.
Yeah.
Research it more, because the only thing that's going to help is not having that automatic reaction like, oh, right, okay, this is hokey pokey, right, okay, whatever. No, you know what? If you have an open mind and look at the research that was done, it's hard to refute that this is an actual thing. She's got people
from all over the world,
right,
contacting her and saying pretty much the same stuff. And they come across an article or something about someone else, and they go, wait a minute, my kid does that. And they just need some guidance. They have to talk to somebody that's got some experience.
Are there a few grifters along the way?
Sure.
Absolutely. There's some people that are taking advantage of it. They want a little bit of fame, want a little bit of notoriety, want to try to cash in on it. Yeah. Sure. In all things, there's going to be some people like that.
It's like the dance moms. They'll exploit their kid for their own financial gain and fame, and that's an unfortunate side of it. But
yeah,
I think in 10 years from now, along those lines of mental ability, we're going to see some huge leaps and bounds.
I'd like to think so.
I'm going to say in 10 years because of the power of the chips that they've been able to come out with using AI, multiplying the power. Then they can sort it out and say, okay, what's some uses for this? It can't just be that, we can see into the future or the fifth dimension or whatever. It's like, well, that's all theoretical and inside this system. Like, where can we apply this to kind of help humanity?
Right.
Maybe it would help solve some medical things, genetic things, your disease and mental things. I don't know.
A lot of interesting
It's going to redefine.
possibilities.
It's going to really redefine like how we like. I think this is redefined with this. You had years ago thinking there was something wrong, and now you're going, wait, there's something right. There's actually something right in there, and then you're going to go forward a little more and say, check this out. You can have this too. Just here's how to do it, and then it would just, I mean, I'll be honest. It's funny for me to say this, but I've always thought that I had a learning disability. And I think a lot of it was born out of my mom passed away when I was a kid, and you have all of this grief and pain, and you don't know what to do with it, and your mind goes through somewhat of a chemical change that you can't reverse, and it maybe unlocks some things and maybe blocks some things. I don't know, but I felt like there were times in my life where I would be. This is going to sound so stupid. Numerically dyslexic.
Okay.
Numbers would be backwards, but not letters. So the brain can play tricks on you. And I don't know if it's a physical thing or if it was just a result of having gone through these, your body releases endorphins and different chemical releases when you're going through things. And that's from working out to emotions, stress, things like that. It could just be an overload of stress that chemically burnt something out, and that's how it washed out.
It manifested.
And I'd have a problem, I'd write the numbers, and then I'd try to remember the numbers, and it would be 1811, and I'd write 1181.
Okay.
It's like, wait,
Okay.
it's 1811. I still kind of do that sometimes. So I always thought, and that's silly to say, I always thought that I had a learning disability. Like, people needed to slow down for me. Let me see it. Let me try it. Tell me what I did. Like, hold my hand through the whole process because I'm just not getting it. And then, I get it now.
I think a lot of people are visual learners, hands-on. Some can just hear it and absorb it and know it. I mean, there's all kinds of
there's
that,
so many levels, and I think I was like on that level like that. And I've only been able to say that and kind of admit that to myself in the last couple years. And it's like people will joke and go, "Oh, we know you had a learning disability." I'm like, no, I really think that, it was like you'd be showing me how to operate this, but my mind would be so busy. I'd be looking, what? Somebody would call that ADHD. Somebody would call that, OCD or whatever. It's all got a connection somewhere in the Ndula Oblongata, Bobby Boucher.
Yeah.
And I think that's with these kids, these savants, and other like when somebody has an injury, it could sort of turn the switch on for that. There's people that lose their vision, and then all of a sudden they have all these other abilities.
Or they hit their head, and all of a sudden they know Portuguese. Never spoke a word of it in their life.
People that have had comas.
Yeah.
They wake up from the coma speaking a different language perfectly. It's like, how did you know to do that? It's like, there's.
Yeah.
How did you? It's like, so
it's very strange.
Is there a wavelength that travels around the world through time, through space? That's each wavelength is a channel, and each channel is,
and your brain is tuned
language,
to it.
Sight, speech,
and
hearing,
if you
taste.
knock it around, you like churning the channel a little bit, like
the marbles.
It's like that fuzzy channel when we were a kid when you squint between the lines.
Yeah. The movie Michael with John Travolta was based loosely on some things that had taken place where a guy had the tumor and he could read a book, speed read, know it all. Speed read, know it all. Quote it right back to you. All this different stuff. He had a tumor. He was dying, but his brain was like hype. Like, how do you get those abilities? What do you got? What button do you have to push?
Right.
I don't know that would be great for everybody all the time to have that. But it would definitely, I think, help advance some things.
You just hope you don't have to give up something to get it.
Right.
A lot of these situations, the person has given up some ability of their life,
what effect on you,
or were born without that ability
in
order to gain the other part.
Yeah, That's what I think they're going to figure out, and they can just say, okay,
You don't have to hit yourself in the head with the
we're going to
hammer
minority report your eyeball.
Yeah.
Then we're going to put this new thing in, and then you can do all this stuff. I don't know. It's crazy to me that a guy figured at one time, if I just put this screwdriver into your eye and knock a hole in your skull, you'll be a dummy and you won't cause any more trouble for your parents. It
won't kill you.
Literally doing this to children.
Wow.
And how did you even come to that conclusion that would work?
Mm-hmm.
Like, explain that. Explain that.
Mm.
So, next week on Lobotomy Central. Yeah. I'm definitely going to follow up and listen to some more of that podcast and see where it goes, because I love that, and I also think that connects with a lot of the stuff that we talk about, like the remote viewing and things like that, and that the easier thing for me to believe out of any lore or urban legend or tall tale is when you can tell me that it was something to do with humanity, and the mind and the body, and different stuff like that. Like I'm so much more ready to be on board with those things than finding Bigfoot, which I would like to find Bigfoot, but I'm going to believe that these savants can tell me my credit score without ever meeting me before I'm going to believe that you saw Bigfoot, even though I kind of think he's out there. But that's a different tale.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was good. That was a good discussion, because definitely a lot more to think about. And, I'll be doing some more research.
Later.